Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
Welcome to Stress-Free Living. It's so good to be with you today. I'm Ray Samich, and I'd like to introduce you to my longtime radio co-host and colleague and my dear spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. Always great to be with you at these programs with our wonderful audience, however you may be listening, whether it's live on radio or the internet, or whether it is on our pre-recorded library, which is YouTube. You can Google that at Stress-Free Living Radio. Yes, Stress-Free Living. I had to think about that twice. Stress-Free Living Radio. You'll find about 100 shows out there that we have accumulated over the years, and you can find one that may be right for where you're at right now, or where somebody special in your life might be in need of a little bit of ideas and thoughts, philosophies that could help them through some difficult, stressful times. Ratanjit, one of the ongoing themes of our conversations, somebody somewhere says, gee, why didn't we tell our kids that? Or why don't we teach our kids that? I know I've said it many times. And I thought perhaps today we do a parenting show. And we've done them before over the years. But parenting has changed so much, especially, I think, since COVID. There was a lot of things that happened in the family environment with COVID. The schools have changed a lot of things that they do. And then you just have society, social norms that are changing. So many things that are being introduced to kids with technology, with cultural changes, with some controversial areas that, you never thought you had to talk to 10-year-olds about gender identity and things like that. And now those are relevant at a very young age to kids. So parenting 101, I think we need it. I think we need both from a parent's perspective, like what we should be doing, but our kids need it. Our kids need to have the best parents right now that they possibly can have to get them through some of the craziness. So where do we start with this? Is this going to be a 100 show series, or can we just knock it out in 1 hour? What do you think?
Well, it is a deep topic, and obviously the rules are very small. So those fundamentals we can cover in one show. But
okay, good.
You can extend those fundamental and its applications that can run for the whole life. So
Right.
I want to start with a story to lay the foundation for this. The story is a hypothetical story, and there are certain elements of that which we may not believe, and all that. So bear with it. So understand the basic fundamental things which I'm trying to say. So there was in old time, there was a king. And we are talking about democracy, and the kings are not popular and all that. So just bear with us. So this king was very kind. He took care of the public, and he was concerned he would change the camouflage himself and go travel in the public and find the difficulties and then finally find the solution for those. So then in his camouflaging and things, and he found people talking about, that it's also, before I go there, another fact was that in that time, the kings would have the liberty to have many women in their harem. So this king had close to 200 queens, and obviously he had children with them. So they were the children of the king. And in his camouflage tours, he found people talking about the atrocity these kids are causing. They are being very nuisance to the society. And that when he came to know that, it upsets him. And so he called one of his senior advisor, who was very wise, and he told him that this is the problem. And how do I solve that? So this advisor said, there is a very easy solution. You are one of the most liked kings, and you have these amazingly loving public. And your kids need attention, they need love, they need somebody to care. So why don't you select families and place your children in their care? They will give them love and they will nourish them, they would have their attention. So now, in real life, are we any different? These kids, we call them ours, our property, mine, my name, my blood. They are basically the sons and daughters of the divinity. They are placed in our house. They are placed in our care. So first of all, that transition has to take place in our mind. So when we see our kids, we should see as a gift from divine or God. And they are not our children, because we don't own even our human body. That is a gift to us. And they are biologically produced by the human body, so they're not produced by us. And they are the gift by the divine power. So now, when a king has, the king is the worldly king, and we have the king of the universe who has placed their children in our house. So how do we treat them? We cannot get upset with them. We have to change our own mannerism. And once we understand that kids don't follow instructions, they basically have a mirror neurons in their brain. They copy you. They copy your habits. So we have to change our habits. We have to systematically make sure that our drinking or smoking or abusing or speaking loud and all those habits have to be changed. So once those habits fall in place for us, that is how we train our children. And that is why we train our guests. And since they are children of the God placed in our house, we must always have enormous respect and kindness and love for them. So we cannot scream and shout at them. We have to always listen to them. We must also understand that they are unique. They are not copycat, although they are born from our human body. But God has never duplicated anything. Everything is uniquely designed and uniquely positioned. So we have to understand the uniqueness of these children and respect them and nurture them. So I've said so many things, and I'm sure you have so many comments, Ray.
No, I'm taking it all in, and I think that story which you have shared before with our audience and other programs, but it is a great way to start this one. It is because it's when we talk about the foundations of Parenting 101, understanding at the core that I think most of us do consider our kids as our possessions. I think that is just, and I don't think we do that in a nasty way or even an egotistical way. I don't think it's intended to be that way, but we just figure that they're our responsibility, that they came from us, that we're raising them, that we're providing all their food and shelter, and we're providing all of their education and everything else. And so we think of them as a possession. I think that is a very true statement. So to introduce the concept that says they are the king's children that we have taken in, it does change things because suddenly now, if we don't own them as a possession, we better be a little more careful with how we address everything because the king could get upset with us if we don't do something right. You know, he they could be taken away from us if we don't do something right, and we never think that that's going to happen. The reality is they could be because the kids could leave if we don't do things right, but it really does change the whole perspective on it, which I appreciate. That's kind of the how. Okay, so how to do it is with this understanding that they're not really your kids. As important as that is, it still doesn't tell us what to do. Okay, it still doesn't say, okay, these are the steps that you take. It's a mindset. Okay, I need to remember that they're not my possession, so that's important. But is that enough? Is that fact enough to help me identify what I should do then? Knowing that they're the king's children, I should look at it that way.
Basically, because they are king's children, they are going to have authority in the kingdom. They would be ultimately in the leadership role in the administration of the king, right?
Yeah.
And they need to be trained and educated and brought up as leaders. And ultimately, they become leader only by having a mindset of creating more leaders and having the mindset of serving, mindset of adding the highest value. So we have to also make them equipped with the right tools. So knowledge and skills are fundamentally tools. So we must create an environment in the house which is more educative, more learning, more interesting, and more curious, and more involving, rather than considering child as a little smaller. We should, right from the get-go, get them involved in decision making. Ask them, is this how to do this? And give them proper respect and proper place in our decision making. So once they become important and critical in the whole household things, their confidence goes up, their desire to learn goes up, their desire to make a difference goes up. And And it is not just complimenting them, just praising them. That is not the real thing. Getting them involved in the difficult decisions, difficult tasks, and having them learn things. Once they get into the once they taste the pleasure and the joy of acquiring knowledge and acquiring skills, they are on the path which is away from the distractions caused by our five senses, right?
You said so much in those last few words. Um, I love that you used the word respect, because let's be frank about it. When we have a baby in our house, and sometimes we think of our kids as babies even when they are 10 and 15 years old, we still kind of remember them. Well, they were an infant. They were a helpless infant laying in a crib that needed us for everything, because we had to provide everything for them in order for them to survive. And sometimes we still think of that even when they're much older and able to do those things on their own. I don't think there is respect as a part of that. I mean, there's a tremendous love. There, in most cases, there's an unconditional love for our children, but respect isn't necessarily part of that, especially as a child. Maybe as they get older and we see them, accomplish some things, and perhaps, take on a spouse and get degrees and get a good job and a career and buy their own homes and all those things. Then we start saying, wow, that child he's really grown up, and I have a respect for what he's doing or she's doing. But as a baby, as a small child, I don't know if respect is in there. So to suddenly add that element, it does psychologically change the way that I approach that child, if I have a respect that this is the king's child and that they are a leader. They are already assured of being an administrator of the world because they're a child of the king. So that's a major philosophical change that I really appreciate you saying. And then the other part of it is to give them a chance to show their leadership skills at a young age. It is definitely a fact that my generation grew up with television in a way that the previous generation didn't have that. And television taught us so many things. We had the Sesame Street, and we had the shows that taught us numbers and words and little puzzles that we had to figure out. And so I remember my parents and that generation always saying, these kids are so much smarter at a younger age because of television. Taking it to the next generation or two, the technology, the advancements of everything with computers and handheld devices has really exponentially increased the intelligence of young people. So that I personally believe that 5-year-olds today are more intelligent than I was probably at 8, in terms of what they can do and what they can understand. And so we're seeing, rapidly through technology, we're seeing the capabilities of children really shine, capable of shining at a much younger age. That being said, are we taking advantage of that? Are we treating them like they are more advanced than we used to? Are we giving them opportunities to really grow in meaningful ways, not just playing video games, but in meaningful things that they can accomplish at a young age? And I think the answer is no. I think we still think of him as a 5-year-old. that's still a little 6-year-old girl. She can't do anything yet, but her mind has been advanced 2 or 3 years past that. And so, I think the idea of entrusting them with leadership, with entrusting them with decision making at a younger age makes a lot of sense. And we realize they're smarter, but we don't give them the challenges that they really could use and could be able to already accomplish at a younger age. Things are
Yes.
really valid points. We
Yeah.
need to take a
Before
break. Let's take a break. We're going to come back. We're just starting unraveling the idea of parenting in our current times, post-COVID, with the world as it's changed. There's things that we need to be doing different as parents, and we're going through those ideas. We'll continue. Please stay with us. All right, we are on a quick break. Dr. Marsh, welcome. We didn't have a chance to say hello. We've only got a couple of you today, but we're glad you're here. Either of you have a comment for us?
No, I appreciate being on. And one of the things I remember Dr. Sandhi said in previous shows is it isn't what you tell them, they learn from your example. And I think that's probably the most poignant thing that for me that he has said, because you can tell people what to do, but it's really they see what you do. And I think in raising children, that is probably the most important thing.
yes,
Great point.
that's
Thank
very
you.
true.
Rakesh, anything else?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, that's the most critical part of parenting is, raise them by example. The other thing that Ratanjit ji said was, very true. And most parents don't really realize this and don't really follow this dictum, so to speak, which is, the children are really the, gifts. And the reason I say they're gifts is because gifts are given, not asked for. I mean, true gifts are given, meaning you don't choose your children, and children don't choose their parents. So they are really true gifts in every sense of the word. And so we have to really, that's how we need to look at our children. They are gifts and they have uniqueness. And I think that was also commented upon, and celebrate it and, and optimize it. I mean, that's how you should look at. And other thing, don't compare your children to other people's children. That's a common trap many parents fall into.
Right. All good ideas. Thank you. Come back.
Thanks.
And we are back on Stress Free Living. Thank you so much for being with us today. Ratanjit Sandhi and yours truly, Ray Sandwich, with you. We are interacting with our Zoom guests during the break, and we invite you to be a part of that audience with us before, during, and after each program. If you'd like to get that link, go out to our YouTube radio channel, Stress Free Living Radio, and you can find the link there and join us live for our programs. Ratanjit, some great ideas that have come from our listeners and our Zoom guest here. You had alluded to a comment earlier. Maybe I skipped over it accidentally because I know it is so vital. So let's maybe start with that. As parents, we spend so much time thinking about what to say. What am I going to say? I've got this problem. My child he's in trouble at school. He's misbehaving. He continues to have bad habits. He's hanging out with the wrong people, whatever it is, whatever the problem is, that I am thinking so much about how I'm going to address it, what I'm going to say, and how I'm going to act, and what timing it's going to be so that I have the best chance of communicating effectively. All of those things go on. And yet the fact is that most of what our child is learning is from them watching us, right? Not from what we're telling them, but it's from what they see us doing. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? I mean, talk about responsibility. I suddenly have to be very concerned as a parent about what I'm doing in my own life, what my child is watching me do. That is the biggest way to teach them of all, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, in the early stage, your thinking power and mind is not as developed as in our case, in the complete human case. So basically, the eye, instead of seeing the eyes and analyzing that, you have in your brain mirror neurons. Mirror means reflective. So
Right.
they observe everything through reflection. So as a consequence, when a father or mother uses a certain language, the child basically uses the same language. And they have a certain way of walking. The child is duplicating that. So basically, they duplicate their habits. So if the father is raises his voice, and then the child also learns to raise his voice. So mannerism and respectfulness and all that things are basically copied by the children. And fundamentally, we also have to tell them the reality. So it is known now that basic character of a child, basic how they would think through, how would they take any information and basically analyze it in their brain, that analysis is done by the basic fact, basic formation, basic character they acquire at the age of 6. And that lasts throughout their lifetime. So instead of teaching our children the capital of all the nations and ABCDs and all those other things, which is a showcase for other guests. Our child can recite all the ABCD and all that. That is your ego, which is infecting the child. We have to understand that every human being is unique, and we have to treat with respect and uniqueness, and we have to park them instead of the human body mode, which is basically is parked in insecurity, fear, greed, lust, and ego. So we have to park them in their brain should be run by the power within them. So we have to tell them who they are. Basically, fundamentally, once they comprehend that, and somehow they may not totally understand this, but this thought process inculcated in them in early stages eventually going to grow and eventually going to become their basic software to handle their every problem they confront. So we have to make sure that at the early age, their core character is not part in the human body insecurities. Your core character is part in the divine power within them, which is completely secure and unbiased. And then finally, we should tell them that this journey of theirs in this human uniform is only very short-lived. It is 80 years, 100 years, and eventually this body is going to disintegrate. So your purpose of life have to be totally understood at a very early stage. Your real joy is tied into fulfilling your real purpose. And your real purpose is to add the highest value, to serve that divine power present in everyone which you come across. and they would not judge others by race, color, gender, age, or their nationality. They would begin to respect every living human being as the power residing in them. So that portion, when we teach them at the early stage, we transform their life. We give them the real incentive to become a true student for life, to constantly learning, constantly acquiring new tools of education and skills to add the higher value, right?
Ratanjit, I cannot absolutely in any way disagree with what you said. I mean, everything you just laid out there is beautiful. I want to transcribe that, honestly, get that into words so I could review it over and over again. But as I've been blessed to have 4 children, we've raised 4, and I've been blessed 3 times that much with 12 grandchildren. And with the grandchildren, I've been able to really take the time to watch, because with 12 of them, you can really see the evolution by age. You can really see the growth, and they're all nearby. Thank the Lord for giving us 12 that we can see on a regular basis, because they're all local. So I can really watch the changes from age 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, right up and through, and some of them now are in their early teens. And so, as much as I agree with everything you say, I don't know how they can grasp the challenging reality that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. I mean, most adults don't understand that, or can't accept it. And is it really possible that a youngster, we can start educating that fact to them? I love everything else that you said in terms of the essence of their character being formed at 6, and all of these other things. I absolutely agree. But can we introduce the who we really are to them at a very young age? Can they really grasp that? It just seems like that is, as much as I said they're smarter today than they've ever been before, that still seems like a concept that it would just confuse the heck out of them in terms of, well, I am me. I mean, I'm just, as you even said, they don't have the ability to analyze yet. They're just basically repeating and duplicating things. And we find it funny when the father says a bad word and the kid says a bad word. We kind of find that humorous, but you've explained that it's mirror neurons. They're just duplicating things. They're not analyzing or understanding. So can they in any way understand that the real us is a spiritual being?
You cannot lecture them, sit down with them and explain this. You have to wait for opportunity to give this information through question and answer slowly. So I'll give you an example of what happened to me, and I think I'm repeating myself. I've told that story many times, but anyways, it is worth repeating. And when I was 6 years of age, and I came back from school, and there was a competition, and somehow I was first in that, and I was given a trophy, and I was very proud, and came home and showed my big trophy to my mother, and my mother, see, and my mother hugged me, my father hugged me, and and then I told my mother, you know what my principal told me? My principal said that one day I'm going to make a name for myself. And my mother hugged me and smiled and very in a nice, not in a serious way, in a joking way. And she said, uh, before you can make your name for yourself, don't you have to know your name? Very simple question. And I said, I know my name. My name is Ratanjit. And my mother laughed again and said, I did not know your name. And I called you that because when I called you for dinner, I didn't want neighbor's voice to show up. So I called you Ratanjit, but I did not know your name, and I don't know your name. So I said, oh, so what's my name? So that's up to you to find out. And in that sense, not only that, what is your name? Who are you? Are you a man or animal are you this human body or are you something else? So there are if you plant these questions in their mind, and pretty soon I would ask other questions because these fundamental questions don't go away. And because of those, instead of feeding the children with answers, feed them with questions and let them discover the answer to those questions themselves. And that will really become their treasure. That will become their real intelligence. But again, you cannot transplant these questions in the children's mind if you did not know this. If you have to get on the path of knowing who you are, knowing what is the purpose of your life, knowing how are you designed. All these questions have to be answered slowly. You have to find, and if you did not answer, you can work together with the children to find the answer. So this is the journey which can be traveled together. And this can transform a human life because it is the question which preoccupy your brain. And if the question is so intriguing, then you would try to find the answer for those questions. Those questions can keep you away from all the ill behavior which otherwise you will practice. Right?
Of everything you just said that I enjoyed listening to, it was so meaningful. One phrase that you said really stood out. Don't feed them with answers, feed them with questions. In my mind, as I was asking that question, I was figuring in my head, seeing in my head me addressing some of my grandchildren, telling them, teaching them that this is the way it is, that, again, and it would have to be different words, but in essence, that you are a spiritual being having a human experience. And I'm saying, how in the world could a 6-year-old comprehend that at all? If I'm just trying to teach them this is the way it is, they're not going to get it. But if I plant the seeds of questions as your mother did in you, okay, then I can see how the child's brain is going to dwell on that and look for answers to the questions that have been proposed. And again, that's done with such respect and dignity. It isn't done as I'm your dad, listen to me, I'm right, and you're stupid, so you better learn this. I mean, that's kind of the way we do teach as parents often. You don't know this, and I do, so just listen. And yet that isn't done with that. That is done in a very gracious, loving, respectful way that says, think about this. Here's some things that are important to you or could be very important to your life. So start thinking about these questions and looking for the answers. that is just a scenario that I think is very doable. One more thing before we go to break. When you talked about you sitting on the lap of your mother, because everybody hears you, Ratanjit, and there's so much respect for you as an individual of great character and wisdom. We say, well, gee, your mom treated you that way, but you're Ratanjit, okay? You're not the normal 6-year-old, okay? When you heard those questions, that's not the way most 6-year-olds are going to respond. But the way that you just presented that with questions, I do see the 6-year-olds that have gone through under my view with my grandchildren. I do see them responding that way. I do see the natural curiosity of children taking a question and trying to figure out the answer and looking for the answer in the world around them. So as that doesn't diminish the respect that I have for you as a 6-year-old child, but it does realize that I don't think that is that unusual. I think that all kids are curious by nature. And especially as those mirror neurons advance and they now are allowed and capable of analyzing things at a deeper level, so they don't just duplicate, but now they ask why. I mean, we all have had the kids that just go through a period of why is everything this way? And it's one of the most enjoyable times of a parent, but it's also one of the most frustrating because every answer you give them, but why? But why? But why? But why? The kids are naturally curious, right? So if
Absolutely.
you give them good questions, it's something really to be curious about that will add value to their life.
All the whys should be replied with the questions.
Meaning,
Rather
what do you mean by that?
all the whys when the children ask why this happens, and you give them another questions
Oh, I get you. Okay.
rather than
Okay.
giving them answers.
So help them to figure out their own answers.
Yes,
Yeah,
you are
yeah.
continuously developing their mind into critical thinking.
Very good. All
You
right.
are
We need to take a quick break.
enhancing their intelligence.
Take a quick break. We're going to come back and continue this interesting conversation. So glad you're with us here today to hear these things and perhaps put some ideas together that can add value to your life and eliminate some of the stress of being a parent. We'll be right back. All right. 90 seconds if anyone has some thoughts to add or additional questions.
Brian, can you unmute your mic and
Welcome, Brian, for the first time. Yeah, unmute yourself. And if you have a question or just a comment or just say hello. No, not so far. Anybody else? Rakesh or Dr. Steve?
The only thing I was thinking of is it doesn't just apply to your kids, but I was thinking in my office, I can tell somebody in my team to do something or this is done it. But if they see me doing it, they see the care and the concern, then they're most likely to mimic it, not what I tell them to do. Because if you tell them but you don't show them that in your behavior, then you've lost them. And sometimes now when they say something that I go, why do you think? And let them explain it. And I think then they can, even in my office, handle it better than if I tell them. I might
absolutely,
have to lead them, but whatever.
absolutely.
Yeah, they're not limited. This is not limited to just work with our own flesh and blood kids, for sure. Rakesh?
Yeah, the only other thing I would add, which again, Vatanjit did touch upon that, is, our job is not necessarily to spoon feed them, like he said, make them ask questions. And I think it's really important to nurture that curiosity so they can grow, at their own pace and in their own dimensions. Because if you inculcate that kind of curiosity in kids early on and teach them how to use vision and analysis to make their decisions, then actually you have given them tools to do well in life. You don't have to spoon feed anything.
Very good. Thank you. We're back on Stress-Free Living. Ratanjit and Ray Samich with you today, talking about Parenting 101, some of the fundamental ideas for being a parent in the new world that we live in. And we all agree, it has changed so much with technology, with social norms, with post-COVID changes. It's a really different environment today for parents to be teaching children. And Ratanjit, one of our people just pointed out here, one of our Zoom guests, that what we're talking about here, while it is designed today in our conversation to be parents within a household and their children, this is actually a way to live our life with everybody that we have influence over. I mean, we don't realize it's insane to me how many people come up to me years later and said, I watched you do this. I was at an event where you spoke 5 years ago, 12 years ago. You said this and I thought about it, or I watched you do this and it affected a decision I made later. We don't realize how we are important in the world to people that we don't even know, that we don't even talk to. I mean, it isn't just the kids in our house or the grandkids in our kids' homes. Everybody is our child that we're influencing of any age all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is another thing that we can tell our kids that you have to be more successful, you have to be better than others, and we when their grades are not very good, we penalize them, we discuss them. In my case, in when I was very small, 6, 7 years old, and when the grade card came, and one of my subject I was C, and or C or D, very 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 low marks, and my father said that this is great, you know whenever you are down, whenever you are failing, that is really success. All your failures are really successes, and many times many successes become your failures. I said, how can that be? So it's only when you succeed, obviously there are still so many shortcomings in you. And in spite of those shortcomings, you succeeded. So your shortcomings would be camouflaged. When you failed, all your shortcomings would be exposed. And now you know what are your shortcomings and you can strengthen them. So it gives you an opportunity to strengthen your weaknesses. So there's a gift to you whenever you understand that you are not succeeded, where you call yourself as a failed. So every failure in that sense becomes a success. So suddenly that thing stuck in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime when in my business I would fail to achieve convert this thing into a sale, or invent a new product, or an experiment would fail or something, so I would really get excited, and my team player would say, what is wrong with this guy? and
Right.
it has always taught me so many new things. All our failures are education. All our failures are chances to improve our weaknesses. So that simple comment made by my parents helped me throughout my life. So similarly, anytime any drawbacks and any difficulty which is faced by the child, instead of giving them the solution, don't worry about, we'll take care of it, this thing. You have to give them something which they can take with them, and ultimately that creates an impression and a new direction, a new vision for them. Right?
See, I have to continue that thought even though we're running out of time, because I think that's such an important point that you just made, Ratanjit. When our children do something bad or wrong, okay, whether it's a bad grade on a report card, or they've misbehaved, or they've hurt somebody, or they've stolen something, stolen a candy bar at the store, or whatever the thing might be, we have two responses basically. One is we punish them. Okay, that's wrong. You did badly. Go to your room, take away your phone, whatever the case might be. We punish them with something. Or we do kind of sweep it under the rug. Well, that's okay. That's not that big a deal. I'll make it better. I'll go talk to the principal. I'll go talk to the store owner. He's a friend of mine, and I'll pay for that, and we'll just write it off as being a kid's mistake, and it's okay. Neither one of those really solves the problem in any way. Neither one of those changes anything. Your solution to address that, to say, what did you learn from this mistake? What did you learn about yourself? Or maybe it wasn't a mistake, but it was something that you didn't do right, didn't do at your highest level, didn't do the way you were capable of doing it. What did you learn from that? And let's analyze it, and let's figure this out. And then, as you said, turn this failure into a success because of how you grow from this experience. That is such a much better choice than the other two options. And yet I would guess that the great majority of times parents take one of those two other options. I did the same thing as you did when I was a kid, so I get it. It's okay. All right. No, it's not. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to teach. It's an opportunity for them to understand what adding the highest value means, and how what they just did wasn't doing that. Really important point that I wanted to share. There's been so many little gold nuggets here today already. Obviously, we're going to continue the conversation because there's much more that we can do. And I know that you even kind of had some core fundamental points that we wanted to bring out that I don't think we made it through. If you wanted to summarize, like in 1 minute, Ratanjit, any aspect of today's show, or leave us with a parting thought, what would that be?
I want to just add one more thing. The main thing we have to prepare our children for life is to add the highest value. By saying the highest value doesn't. If you are not adding the highest value, you take your children with them, you ask for help. Would you help me? And supposing you take your children to a where you are feeding the hungries and you are doing that, those experiences would stay with them for lifelong. And you figure out a project where you are adding the highest value. Get them involved. Don't underestimate them. So once they experience the joy from adding the highest value, they'll be hooked on that. They'll be on the path of acquiring a journey which will add the highest value, right?
I love it. Ratanjit, we'll let that be the last word on this show, but we are going to continue Parenting 101 Part 2. and continue this great thought. If you've got any input for us, if you have any questions or thoughts that you would like us to address in future shows, please do send those to us. Again, the great way to communicate with us is our YouTube channel, Stress Free Living Radio. You can catch so many of our programs there, and you can also interact with us. Ratanjit, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your great ideas of wisdom and love with all of us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much.
And thank you to all of you for being a part of our show. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. We'll talk to you again real soon.
So now we can open everybody's microphones.
Yep, we're off the air. So now go, especially with ideas for the continuing show, if you've got some other different thoughts that you'd like us to elaborate. Your turn, everybody.
Dr. Marsh?
Right, let's ask. Okay, there you go. Go ahead, Tuck. Sorry.
I'm gonna have to go in about 5 minutes. I'm getting yelled at by my wife. So I don't have any good answers. Wendy, I'm on just a second. That's the reality, right?
Right.
So one of the things that occurred to me was to take it on a really basic level. So when I have patients, I'm a dentist, and if I have patients who don't floss and brush, instead of our hygienists say you need to floss and brush to get rid of gum disease and decay, maybe instead of telling them, I need to ask them, so what do you think, how do you think decay happens? Or what do you think would happen if you don't brush? And that way they might take better ownership than me just telling them, and they go, yeah, there he is again talking about it. But if they understand why and how, and they get engaged more by asking them, I might have better success. And I think that applies to lots of things. I mean, that's very basic.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. You know, again, if we just teach them, if we just say it, they don't necessarily listen or care to. But if you ask them the question and they come up with the answer, then they're going to buy into it.
Even in the
Very good.
business world, it works. When I developed our waterproofing system for bridges, and I went to the chief engineer, and I said this, there is enough chloride ions into the deck. So you only need 500 parts per million to form an active cell. And how about if those chloride ions don't ionize without water? So what if we waterproof the deck? So this guy said, how do we waterproof the deck? So I said, we have this coating. I have no experience with it. I don't know whether it works or no. But theoretically, all the properties shown by this coating, it appears that it would work. So this guy said, we have research budget. How about we find out in the field? So it gave us a project, and eventually that project became a nationwide product. So it is, instead of selling, you have to show your vulnerability. You have to show your lower, you have to ask questions. You have to, those things work in all part of life.
Brian says his microphone isn't working, but he's been texting you, brother, and messaging you. And he just came up with a really good point. He says, when you ask a child what they think, watch them light up because they feel valued. A child is going to focus on the responses of who they look up to. But, that's true not only with children, but anybody. If people like to be asked, they like to be respected enough to be asked their opinion, and they light up like somebody really cares what I think.